Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I'm your Loremaster, here today to do something a little different. Today, I am covering a lost kingdom of the Inner Sea region, instead of one that currently exists. Therefore, instead of covering its geography, its people, and the like, I'll treat this as a history video. The first sense, my first video. So let's talk about the Jistka Imperium, the very first kingdom to emerge after Earthfall. A topic we are talking about because of something which has happened recently, and something which is coming up. You might have seen the name recently in the Muagni Expanse book as a potential builder of the first Conroso. As for the other, well, if you want information on a topic we know is coming soon from Paizo, stick around. I'll save you some trouble and say it will include my last side tangent today. First, we need to start this from the beginning. Our story begins sometime in the later half of the Age of Darkness. Still gives us about 500 years to work with, but somewhere 8,000 years ago. Many people still managed to live despite the dark and the cold, but they were all scattered and unorganized. However, one woman by the name of Tindra stood up and united her people together for one goal: rage. There were still some scatterings of the Azlanti Empire, sitting in large, at the time potentially ruined but still standing, towers, living as if they were the nobles in the Masque of the Red Death. And the scattered tribes who looked and saw and remembered who these men were, blamed them and their civilization for Earthfall. They were not actually, but Tindra and the people did not know that. She and her people rose up and took the citadel from the starving Azlanti nobles. They took all artifacts they could and took them back to their caves to study. However, at this point in the cataclysm, most people had forgotten how to read and write, and therefore they could not make sense of the magic scratches. But they knew they had great secrets, and so these tribesmen, so that the later Jistka people who were referred to as the ancestors, stowed them away deep in a cave, till they could find a way to use them. Now let's break this up with a side tangent, shall we? Today's first, since we are speaking of the Azlanti Empire, and of empires which live and breathe off bloodlines, let's continue to work through the Azlanti gods with Mia, the Azlanti Goddess of clarity, lineage, and physical perfection. She was the goddess who taught the Azlanti to respect their ancestors and cherish those who had done great things. As you can imagine, this caused many of the aristocracy, as they would in Jistka millennium later, to flock to her temples in order to try and trace their family lines back to great heroes of ancient times. She was also respected because she taught her followers they should try and help the less fortunate and in need. You know, not try to hide behind castle walls in order to ensure that just you survive while the rest of the world burns. Athletes and warriors also worshipped her, in order to improve their health. She was related to two other major Azlanti gods, both which we will be covering at later dates. Her husband Elion, who was always traveling, and his daughter Sivka, who they were both ashamed of for her elections. We'll get to that when we get to it. Either way. But for years, those who had built the Jistka stood over their ties to their ancestors, until the end of the Age of Darkness, when the sun shone upon the earth once more. There, a man by the name of Awustan rediscovered a cave and the writings sealed within. And as he looked upon the writings, suddenly he was gifted with magical insight, and the words made sense to him. It is unknown what deity granted this gift, or what deities were worshipped by the Jistka in general. But when he, his friend Venistos, and his wife Minara returned to the tribe, they brought civilization with them. But he wanted more. So he traveled, from the people who lived in the lands that would one day be Nidal, to the first Dwarven Sky Citadels, to the ruins of Thessalonia. He slowly gained knowledge of other civilizations, recording it all in his journal, the first copy of the Polyhera. Of course, their search for civilization eventually took them off-world, to the plane of Axis. It was also here that they made deals and began the long journey of summoning outsiders to be used by the Imperium. The first they made deals with, and our second side tangent, are Aeons. Aeons are the keepers of the order of the universe, ensuring all physics work correctly, that certain rules are continuously followed, etc. Each are connected to some balancing point in the universe, with there being some obvious ones like light and darkness, birth and death, and creation and destruction. Others are less obvious, like knowledge and ignorance, magic and technology, and freedom and fate. There are also those who stand over universal functions like karma. Aeons, when they show up, usually are trying to fix something they see as broken. And cities being created or destroyed in a day is not a common occurrence. As for deities, questioning them has brought up a being they call Monad, a being they fail to elaborate on, but who sounds like the personification of universal order. But where do Aeons relate to Axis? Well, recent 2E lore update, with the tilting of the balance of order and chaos in the world, Aeons arrived at Axis, initiating an event they call the Convergence. An event they claim happens in cycles, but this will be the first time models will be around to see it. They revealed that the Axamites, the main outsiders found in Axis, are actually Aeons, those who broke away from the whole in order to pursue the path of creation. Axamites, similar to certain potentially Jistka-related race we recently got, tend to be divided into 3 jobs that they mostly fall into. They either explore the laws of reality and order, they build and repair the cities throughout the plane of Axis, or they produce another kind of Aeon, the Inevitables. These Aeons' purpose is to act as the war machines in the endless war of order versus chaos, with the oldest being the demigods level primal inevitables. Powerful superweapons that represent concepts like planetary motion, mathematics, and entropy. The technology on how to create the primal inevitables has been lost, and 3/4 of the primals that have ever existed have been destroyed in one way or another. In honor of these, their civilization obsessed overlords, Alstron and its companions would return to officially form the Jistka Imperium, a monarchy focused on expansion at all costs, and focused much on establishing bloodlines dating back to the earliest known heroes of the kingdom. 2 factions would quickly form, the Magistrates and the Artifices. The Magistrates mainly lived on the Goran continent, in the current area of Rahadomi, and focused their efforts on making pacts with planar creatures, mostly genies, slowly gaining power and prestige that way. Eventually, they began forming into powerful expansionist armies that they would be known for. The Artifices, inspired by depictions of the inevitables, created artificial beings of all forms, from golems to more complex creations. It's not time for them yet. Either way, they set their workshops in what would today be cheliacs, and created a strong caste system, from the lowest who worked in the mines and forges, to priests who drew on divine power, to the judge artificers who led vast golem armies. However, soon the kingdom, being a product of civilization and using Axis as its model, fell into corruption. The rulership was not passed by bloodline. The Imperiatics would do what they could to keep the families in power. Likewise, many people tried to marry into the royal family, creating a tangled web of royal houses that would eventually lead to many false claims of relation. And expansions began pushing their borders farther and farther, killing their nation, making it an eventuality until the nation pushed too far. First toll of the end bell came with the rise of their civilization in the east, Osirian. Its more centralized location soon had Jistka losing all of its trade partners. Seeing the end nigh, the Imperium went to war, doing what they could to snuff out their enemy before it was too late. The Artificers created gigantic golems fueled by the fiends to serve as massive fortresses. The magistrates formed large towers with items designed to control wild elementals of a wide area. Osirium? They brought about ancient necromancers called Osage, their powers rising defeated elemental commanders and binding powerful outsiders known as Div. And one pharaoh, the Pharaoh of Forgotten Plagues, created a powerful virus designed to kill all who had the blood of the royal family. It had a twofold effect of killing off the royal line and exposing all of those who were as pretenders, bringing the infighting to its worst. And so, the Jistka Imperium did fall. And with that end, let's take a look at our third side tangent, going with a god which took an active hand in Jistka's end, Ahriman. Ahriman, god of destruction, tears, and nihilism, is a mysterious being that is the antithesis of the genies, the anti-life to those of the elementals. He works to spread wrong thoughts. He often does not go for direct destruction, but the slow corruption of systems, slow spreading of despair, creating blasphemies for every religion. He and his corrupted genie followers, the Div, make their home in her Manabad, a city on Mount Kaf in Abaddon. But the before-mentioned Pharaoh of Forgotten Plagues, in his war of Jistka, built a shrine called the House of Oblivion to allow Ahriman and the Divs to directly join the war, where Ahriman managed to destroy some of Jistka's elemental controlling towers himself, but craters still in the areas to this day. It is unknown if he can still use the shrine to move between the two worlds. However, his worshippers, the before-mentioned Usage, necromancers, still spread nihilism across the Golden Road. Also, real-world side note, there are a lot of fiends piles named after real-world demonic creatures. Ahriman is their name for the Zoroastrianism's god of evil, the first such being of an organization of an organized religion, before the formation of the Abrahamic religion and the devil, the famed evil Angra Manu. Shout out to all your faith fans out there. Be careful who you make deals with in the desert. Today, Jistka has little remaining influence. The Osirians so thoroughly destroyed the Empire that the so-called Path of Salt along the north coast is still infertile after 1,000 years. What kind of structures they had and grew on were repurposed to build Osirian temples. On the Avastan side of things, the forges were left to crumble, and despite many remain today, they do so as crumbling rusty ruins. The closest remaining influence they have on the modern world is that Hell Knights arrange their orders the same as Jitska's armies, and that there are still some out-of-the-way towns or temples which continue to be haunted by elementals or constructs. Which brings us to our final side tangent, with that definition being twisted because this is the reason I decided to make the video at this time. Because some of the creations of Jistka remain to this day. Recently, we were given new ancestries, including the Conroso, which are speculated to have been made from Jitska's experiments of aeons. However, they are not our topic for the side tangents, since I have a soft rule about making videos about products that just came out. However, I do not have such a rule for products about to come out, and it has been announced Guns and Gales will have a new ancestry with Automatons. But before that happens, let's take 5 or 10 minutes to look at what Automatons were in 1E, to give room to speculate about 2E. First, a brief history. During the height of the Jistka Imperium, the Artifices of the North have perfected their creations, creating constructs in all forms. Eventually, they reached a point where they were able to produce an advanced metallic body that could hold a central intelligence core. This core contained the downloaded brain of a former citizen of Jistka, almost 100% voluntary, because they saw this as a great privilege, and even the poor and outcast was scrambling to become test subjects. Sorry about that. When a core is attached to the body, it downloads the personality of the core. It is not the core itself which is the personality. If the core is removed, the automaton still has its memories and everything as itself. It's just unable to move until no power source is found. However, if this new power source is a different core, the personality from that core will be downloaded, causing the two personalities to fight each other to be the main personality. The end result of these battles varies based on the automaton's frame and how strong it's intended to be, but how they affect memories and such is too far to speculate. However, eventually Jistka fell apart. Many automatons were destroyed. Many were not. With limitless lifespans due to how they were created, they faded into the background of the world around them. Some stayed hidden on the fringes of Galarian, but still out there in a way that makes them remain mostly unknown. Others moved to Axis, where they fit in pretty well with many visitors not knowing any better, thinking that they're just inevitables. Now with the general background out of the way, let's go through the 5 different kinds of automatons that we have been given, before we look at the possibilities likely to be presented to us in the near future. The weakest were familiar automatons, those who were created to house those seen as unworthy, mostly. Judge Artifices, seeing the incoming collapse, instead took lower spec bodies to allow themselves to avoid the fighting. These automatons often took the form of common animals, including birds, dogs, snakes, and what became a favorite, cats. Though wealthy patrons tend to create custom frames, listed examples being fairy dragons, Latin acorns, and imps. Many of the earliest served as research subjects, their failures serving as stepping stones for the later works. There are more cores than automaton frames. Because of their weakness, new cores are almost guaranteed to take over if inserted, so they try to avoid any other cores at any cost. All familiars leak radiation, causing what is known as arcane disease. Likewise, many mages paid extra to have their own favorite spells engraved on their bodies for future use. Outside of sneaking around Golarion and delivering messages on Axis, there are also a decent amount who spend their time in the Boneyard, serving as comfort animals to souls waiting in line for judgment. Stalker automatons were hunters who had bodies specialized to serve as scouts and assassins. They mostly had bodies designed after large cats, though there are some rumors that those based off bears or drakes existed. In terms of cores, it is not mentioned how well they handled new cores, but hunting down Edda automatons were decent sport, and cores are nice trophies. Abilities they have include the ability to adapt the bodies to create perfect camouflage, and to slip into the ethereal plane as ethereal jaunt. After the fall of Jistka, they decided to spend all their time hunting, often traveling in packs in order to best take down harder and harder targets. In exchange, champions were the standard warriors, from the lowest ranked soldiers to generals, most of them humanoids, standing about 14 feet. These warriors had two specialized forms of attacks: pincers, which they used to attack up close, and enemy drip blasts from their core. Since the fall of Jistka, the ones that remain on Golarion have been spotted from time to time, giving rise to legends of metal warriors saving those in trouble. They are also known to organize tournaments of Edda automatons and Axis to prove their strength. Above the champions are sharpshooters, the best archers who won their positions in tournaments. These tended to have smaller frames, each being around 4 feet tall, most of them custom made to have designs like runes or tattoos. This frame was to allow them to fly, using arcane flames similar to a jetpack. Their main form of attacks were energy bows, ones that continually could be reloaded with the excess energy of their cores, making their assaults closer to an artillery barrage, while also cleaning up the litter afterwards. After the fall of Jistka, they have taken on either saving random travelers like champions, or hovering over sites important to themselves or Jistka's society as a whole, serving as silent guardians. As for the outer planes, they tend to prefer attacking the maelstrom instead of hanging out in Axis. The final kind were the master automatons, those which were specifically made for the artificial conclave, leader of the Artifices. Despite their power, they were not used in battle, mostly just serving as strategists. All of them were custom made, but there were a few powers which they had in common between all of them. Ghost touch hooks, the ability to rebuild oneself, and most importantly, the power to destroy and consume other cores. This was made so that they could keep Edda automatons from going rogue. However, they soon found that this had the unintended effect of strengthening the master automatons, which led to an arms race between various different greedy artificers. In the end, while it was the war for Syrian that destroyed Jistka in the south, it was infighting greed which ended them in the north. And that is all I have for you today. The history of Jistka, and some speculation to prepare us for guns and gears. So what do you think we will get with Automatons? The two options I see are either starting with a familiar and upgrading to stronger bodies representing the ancestry skills, or staying as a champion and increasing a single body that strengthens the ancestry skills. Either way, we are going to be spending some time on the Golden Road for a couple weeks. Hope to see you back here next week when we talk about another, slightly more successful ancient civilization, both how it was then and how it is today. Try not to get lost.